Welcome to Secrets from a Billionaire's Matchmaker with matchmaker Gina Hendrix.
Hey, welcome to Secrets from a Billionaire's Matchmaker. I am your host, matchmaker Gina Hendrix, they call me. And this episode we are calling Delusional Dating, Gold Diggers, Age Lies, and Red Flags. And I'm going to cover it all. This is a live recorded session from some of the ladies that have gone through my coaching program. We do some rapid fire Q&A, and I never hold back. I pull some triggers. Some women get mad at me. You never know what I'm going to say. But here's the thing. If you ask the question, I'm going to give you the unvarnished truth. Always. Okay. So I'm going to cover red flags. I'm going to cover your age. Should you lie? How do I feel about what I call fudging your age? You'll notice that I oftentimes will refer to men and say my guys or my clients. I'm referring to my matchmaking clients always. But always, everybody is anonymous. I do everything I can to protect everybody's privacy, so you never have to worry. If you ever want to join in a live session at a future date, just email us, teamgina@ginahendrix.com. But in this episode, we're talking about your age, we're talking about safety, we're talking about swiping right, gold diggers, boundaries, and so much more. And yeah, some ladies get angry with me, but hey, what can I say? I'm always going to tell you the truth. So buckle up, baby, get ready, and get your questions ready. Because if you have great questions, I want them. Send them to me. And at some point, who knows, I might read them on the air. You can always email me your great questions, whether you're a man or a woman, at teamgina@ginahendrix.com. And I'm glad you're here for it. Let's do this.
So should I be lowering my age? Because I'm always told I look much younger than I am. I'm 55 and people always guess I'm like 40. So I mean,
Katie,
should I be putting it as 45? I don't know.
You look great, but you don't look 45. I'm going to be totally honest with you. But you look great. You look great. Okay. But I wouldn't go 45. But it's like if you're just fudging by a few years, and I wouldn't do 5 years anyway, I would say if you wanted to, you could say 52, 53. But it's like nobody is ever 100% honest with anybody. And why do we need to? If it's not going to, okay, and I know this is a controversial opinion. I know it is. But again, I work in this space where the lines can be gray, and I get why it's gray, okay? And if, again, when it's usually gray about age, it's just because a lot of times it's because people just want to be seen by the people they actually want to meet and don't want to get overlooked.
I have a quick question. You said something last week that I kind of disagree with, because you said something about I was watching a video. You were going through some men and, going over their profiles and such. And then down in the comments section, they say, oh, I'm 58, not 55. And you were like, oh, at least he's being honest. Well, in my opinion, he was obviously trying to put himself in a lower category so he could get younger women. And to me, that was a lie, because on some of these sites, you can't change it. They're right. You can't change it because they know this is the same guy. You cannot change your age. And so for me, I'm like, you didn't mess that up. You were looking for a younger woman trying to get in a younger category.
I love that question. Absolutely love that question. So let's talk about it. So I deal with this with women. I deal with this with men. Okay. When you get to a certain age and it's, I don't know, over 50, maybe, it gets tricky. Dating gets tricky, right? Because a lot of times you get excluded by people who think, oh God, it couldn't be handsome guys over 55, couldn't be handsome guys over 60, so they're skewing younger. And so women do it, men do it. So a lot of times, because that is a delicate gray area, it really is. And so they're a lot of times it doesn't necessarily, there isn't one hard reason why somebody will fudge their age, but I understand it. Okay. I've learned to have a lot of empathy, and there's things I do understand and there's things I don't understand. Okay. Or I'm not okay with. But when it comes to fudging your age by, let's say 3 years, 5 years is getting a little much, in my opinion, a little much. But again, I'm empathetic because I understand if a man is 60, let's say, and he wants to date women in their 50s, and why shouldn't he? A lot of women in their 50s are go, oh, I'm not even going to look at a man who's 60 because there's not going to be any decent ones. So they're going to set their age thing maybe at 55 would be their cutoff. Okay. And I see both people do this. Men do it, women do it. So a lot of times people will make their age a little younger just so that they're on the radar of people that they want to match with. It doesn't mean that they are targeting exceptionally young women, but they just want to get on the radar. And but I do say to my ladies and to my men, if any men ask me, I don't really do coaching for men, although at some point I'd like to. You know, come clean in the bio. Because I think if you come clean sooner rather than later, it's at least being transparent sooner rather than later. Because people just want to get on the radar of people they want access to. And that's why they fudge their age. So I think we need to be a little less judgmental up front and give people more room to show us who they are. Now, if a guy has fudged about his age and he puts that he still wants kids, like wants them, then that's a guy who definitely is saying, I want women of an age that can have children with me. But if a guy is just kind of fudged his age by a few years, and again, I deal with women who do that too, and it's fine because they don't want to get overlooked by people they might want to meet. But as long as it's not a huge gap, and you're like, okay, I'll tell you, this one woman came through my program, okay, and I fought with her and I fought with her and I fought with her because every picture she was like completely photoshopping and face tuning the pictures to where the whole picture, the curtains and everything was like warped. It's like, and I didn't know because like some of the people who are working with me, I was like, what's wrong with their pictures I showed? And they're like, well, she's stretching them out and face. Those are lies that are not okay because she's not going to show up and look like her pictures. But if you look like your pictures, even though you have fudged by 3 years, okay, that's not the biggest issue. I think when we're in the age range of having children and those people who are still like, if a woman's going through the world wanting to be dishonest about her age because she wants to target younger men, but yet she's not in a bracket to have kids and he is in that younger bracket to have kids, that impacts somebody. But when it's something that's not going to impact anybody, like you not being honest about your age by 3 years, it's not going to be debilitating to him. I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. And you're coming clean sooner rather than later. That's how I feel about that.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the dating apps and pre-qualifying because pre-qualifying is so important. This is a great question.
What are your suggestions on someone who messages you without extending? Okay, so these days, because things have changed on Bumble, right? So these days they can either extend the time, which is effort, or if they're answering your prompt, I consider that effort as well. As long as they are answering your prompt with an appropriate reply. So now on Bumble, they call it the opening move. What is your opening move type thing, right? But let's look at it more as your conversation starter. So because essentially that's what it is, right? So now a guy can talk to you based on, your conversation starter. And I'm literally spoon feeding it to you guys so that you can spoon feed it to the men. And we're giving them a couple of different options in terms of conversation starters. One, we either say, hoping you ask me an interesting question out of the gate, winky face, or you say, what's one thing you'd really like to know about me? Okay. These are great conversation starters. You're literally telling them exactly, what to show up with when they knock at your door type of thing, metaphorically speaking. Okay. And then if they don't, that to me, if they're completely ignoring, like we literally just spoon fed it to them. And if they can't follow directions enough to at least ask you an interesting question about you or something that makes sense based on what you've already told them, then to me, they're just a complete idiot and we just kick them to the curb because this is we're not going for quantity. We're going for quality. And I'm trying to teach you guys how to read between the lines and how to streamline the process. Now there is a fine line because I think you guys a lot of times and not you specifically, but just in general, I think people, men and women, they rule people out too quickly without really kind of looking at what's most important. And I think, people rule people out too quickly just based on an ugly photo, but it's like, let's read some details first. Let's not, if you're there to try to meet a quality person, you don't want to run it like some video game, right? So you're just, you want to just take a minute. And I mean, listen, there's obviously hideous photos. If somebody's just got something that's just egregiously, oh, of course, I get that. But if a guy's just kind of like, looks like a limp dish rag, then, but it's not hideous, he's not hideous. And yet he's got his name, he's got his occupation, he's got his education right there. I would say, man, let me just see. Maybe this guy's got, some sort of interesting life, or maybe he didn't choose the best. I would go on more of a fact-finding mission before kicking somebody to the curb. Here's another good question. When during the dating process should you give your real number? I'm having trouble determining when it's the right time to give them my real number to use instead of Google. The issue is it's easy to find here where I live with my phone number. Right. So I would say, honestly, I don't know. I don't see a reason to give them your real phone number until maybe after date 3. I mean, I don't see a reason, because with the Google phone number, they can call, they can text. So, there is no reason. I mean, in theory, I think you can just reframe your mind in terms of real phone number versus not. It's a Google phone number. It is a real phone number. It is just let's consider it your dating phone number, right? So instead of going, oh, he doesn't have my real number, sure he does. This is one of your 2 real numbers, and this just happens to be your dating number. So reframe the thinking there so that you don't feel like, oh gosh, I need to go ahead and give him my real. Nah, I would say not until after date 3. But by date 3, you should know if you really like him or not. And then what you would say, you don't have to say, here, let me give you my real number. You could say, here, let me give you my other number. Let me give you my other number that might be a little easier to reach me. Because I don't always look at my, my second phone number or something like that. You know what I mean? And they're not going to think anything of it. It's fine. And if they do, who cares anyway, to be honest.
I've always just given out my normal number.
Right. So let's talk about, So let's talk about that for a minute. And thanks for bringing it up. So this is kind of my new thing. Okay. And it's my new thing because, in all this time, I've never worried about stuff. And I fortunately, knock on wood, have not had issues. But I do think that the more mainstream the apps become, and I mean, these days there's zero stigma really, and it's more mainstream. So, you're opening your world up to more people. This is both good and bad, right? So, and the dating apps, like I tell everybody, is just a sample of what's in the real world. So that means few exceptional people, a lot of mishmash, and then what's great about the apps is that this whole big world, they're all condensed onto the app. So it is going to mirror what's in the real world, which means exceptional people, great people are few and far between, but they are there and they're going to be easier to spot. The other side of it is that, again, opening up the world to potentially connect with people who might be unsavory. Now, I haven't had any instances, thank God, with my ladies having any huge issues, but I have had a couple where the women have come back. Yeah, I would say in the last, few months, 2 women have had situations where the guy kind of freaked them out, and they wished they hadn't given him their real phone number, because if you look up your phone number, usually somebody can find your address in 2 seconds. And so these days, I just think, why not be more cautious, And so that's kind of my thing. I'm telling all my ladies now, protect your privacy and do a Google phone number. And that's the thing. That is my new thing. So thanks for bringing that up. Hey, you got a question for me?
I always never really listed what I did as a profession because it seemed to steer men off. You've told me to do that, so I have. So I have now, and I just do this as a learning lesson for anybody. I now either get the men who say, what do you do? And I'm like, it's listed.
Right. They're just idiots. The guy is high level enough. He won't be questioning this stuff. Like, I know that if I said that to any of my guys, I always think when you guys are asking me stuff, I always think about my guys that I've worked, either I'm currently working with or have worked with in the past. And I try to apply those to the conversations I would think I would have with them. I know for a fact, if I said to any of my high level guys, and my guys are extremely high level, they wouldn't come back and go, oh, what is that? Oh, I don't, it just tells me he's not particularly sophisticated enough.
See, that's how I feel too.
And you're right. Well, you're right. You don't even have to think. I know for a fact, right? Like all the stuff I give you guys is not theorizing. It's not even based on one person. It's not even based on somebody who told somebody. It's literally me having conversations with my guys. And so and not one guy, but like hundreds and hundreds over 16 years. So, yes, I can tell you for sure. It just means he's not particularly sophisticated enough.
And then because when I'm traveling, because I travel a ton, luckily for personal and professional, that I swipe when I'm on planes, I'm in, because you never know who's there. And a lot of people work remote. I do not. So it's like they'll say to me, oh, what is a beautiful girl from Las Vegas? How did I stumble upon her? And like they're challenging, like, how are you going to make this work? And I feel like going, do we even care about that right now? I'm just trying to meet people and see if I can get on a date. Like, I'm not looking
okay. So if I'm going to apply this back to my clients, I have some clients who have no problem meeting somebody wherever. And then I do have those clients that are high level, yet they just really want to make it as easy to get together on a regular basis as possible. Although I will say, thinking in my mind, I would say certainly the wealthier guys that have no problem, either they have their own plane or they have access to planes, like private, a lot of them are in, sometimes they share, it's almost like a co-op, they share private planes. Yeah. They have no problem. They'll get on the plane. Although, if I think about my one client, he would fly anywhere to meet somebody, but he would say to me, but Gina, I have to still run my, like, one particular company that's in San Francisco. So she can't be stuck somewhere. She has to be in where she can, because again, if a guy's looking for a very serious long-term relationship, they think all the way through. You know what I'm saying? So they don't mind doing the distance to try to make it work, as long as they think that you can relocate. And that will be some, and some will say, oh, well, I could relocate. You see what I mean? But so that part does vary from guy to guy.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi. So a question about what you said about the career. So I don't know, this might be like location based. I'm in Miami, Gina. I know you're in LA.
Yep.
There's a lot of fear and I've been talking to different men about gold diggers. And the majority of the guys that I'm seeing who are in my age range, et cetera, do not put their career. And they say they're successful. And it's like, how do you just automatically like, sorry, you're out?
I'm going to tell you something. You determine how you want to handle it. But here's what I know. There is no man that I've ever met in the history of having my business, working with some of the most wealthiest men in the world, that are ever worried about gold diggers if they truly have gold. If you see what I'm saying. It's just those guys that are cheap, that are, they have issues, whatever. To me, it's a red flag. Any man that talks about gold diggers, whether he doesn't have money, whether he's cheap, whatever his deal is, he's not that kind of high value guy that we're looking for, bottom line. Because that's a negative. That's equivalent to a woman telling a man, yeah, I just meet all these guys that are assholes. That would be a red flag if the woman is saying that. So it's equally a red flag if a guy's showing up talking negatively about women. Here's another good question. How do you tell a man you are not interested without being a bitch? I try to be kind, but they will argue and want more time, phone calls, video chats to get to know them. You're going to do it like this, and if they have an issue with it, that's their issue. And there will be those men who are jerks, who will try to argue with you about it. Okay, well, that's fine. That's why you ruled them out anyway, right? And then there will be those that understand. So there's no way to kind of control the audience or their reaction. But how you would do it is just to say simply, you do it a couple of ways, okay? One, you could say, hey, it's been great getting to know you, but I just don't feel like this is quite the connection I'm looking for. Boom. That's all you owe him. If he wants more, he doesn't get more. He doesn't deserve more. That's where, if he's trying to argue, that's where you block or unmatch. And a lot of times I say, oh, don't unmatch them, don't da-da-da. But if they're doing that, if they're trying to argue with you or trying to kind of manipulate you, because a therapist once told me the most brilliant thing I never forgot, and it was a man. He said, if you ever tell somebody, and this is friends, family, men, whatever, if you tell somebody no once, if you tell them no, I don't want to do this, no, and they keep going and try to talk you into it, at that point, they're just trying to manipulate you. And they don't care about what you want. They're trying to get what they want. All right. So I think if you just said, hey, you know what? It's been nice getting to know you. This isn't really quite the connection I'm looking for. It's all you owe them. Another thing you can do, and women have asked me about this, like, hey, Gina, I've gone, I agreed to go on this date with this guy. Now I thought about it. I really don't want to. Well, another way to do that is to say, hey, I just happened to have a second date with somebody last night or whenever, and we're really liking each other more than I even realized. And I just want to see where it goes with him first before I make any decisions about going out with anybody else. That's another go-to.
Let's talk about meeting men in real life. I know you all want to talk about that. Here's a good idea.
I just missed an attorney convention at the resort. It was I would have booked a night and gone to the pool and the bar. Yep, that's clever. I would Google like tech conventions, investor conventions, things that feel a little more high level in your area. Get creative, right? Get creative. That's how I was when I first started my business. I had to get creative about how do I access the type of men I would want as my clients. And you've got to do it. How can I access? But I will say you got to be careful about the conventions, right? Because there are a lot of men that go to conventions and they're single for the weekend, So you have to do a combo of things. You have to be friendly and flirty, but you also have to be willing to ask them straight up. Because if they're clearly flirting and hitting on you, you have to literally be willing to ask them, so are you single? Or what would your wife say about you being at the convention? Things like this, because they a lot of times won't tell you until you actually put them on the spot and ask them. And then they'll come clean. Most 99.999% of the time. My fear about finance is that they may be a younger crowd for men. It might be. I mean, listen, this is why I do love the dating apps, even though I know the dating apps take a lot of work. But do you see how it is easier to just sit in your house and get creative and target them on the dating apps than trying to run around to conventions? But if you guys tell me you want to think outside the box, you want to meet men off the dating apps, I'll help you. But it is going to be as hard as you think it is on the dating apps. It requires even more work offline. All right. What does your wife do for a living is actually a really good one. I love that. Golf tournaments are good too. They could be so in the, in bro mode almost, you know what I mean? Of trying to meet a woman. But no matter where you go, you definitely have to ask these guys straight out about their wives yes, you got to get clarification on that.
Hey, I have some ideas for your photos for those of you who are struggling trying to do your own photos.
Sometimes people are getting their sister, their young niece. I know a woman that got her housekeeper to take her pictures. People are like thinking outside the box. You know what I mean? As long as it's not professional. And why don't I want professional photos? Because sometimes they just look too artificial. And while the stuff we do looks carefully curated and elevated, it still looks real. All right. I don't want you guys doing the Facetune. I don't want you guys, because here's what I want to also remind you guys of. As soon as you start tweaking one photo and one photo looks kind of fake, it's going to make them question every photo. Okay. Just like you have to flip everything in your mind about how you look at guys. If he had one photo that looked kind of fake or something looked off, you'd rule him out because you'd be like, I don't know what this guy's trying to pull here. You know what I mean? And men feel the exact same way.
Okay, let me read this question. It's a good one. Hey, Gina. So when I get on a phone call with a guy, like you say, to pre-qualify them ahead of time, I just have no idea what I should be asking them. Okay, great. Let's get into it.
When you get on a call, you want to ask any questions that you're unclear about. If you're not, like, let's say he's put down that he's divorced, for example, okay? On a call is a great place to say, oh, so how long have you been legally divorced? And you want to use those words, legally divorced, because a lot of times
they'll say, oh, well, I mean, I'm not legally divorced, but we've been separated for a number of years. You've matched with a guy and everything seems great, but you're not 100% what his lifestyle really looks like, or if he's, if he's going to be exactly at the level you're going for. So if you're familiar with his area of town, me and another guy lived both in Venice, for example, and I'd say, oh, so what are some of your favorite restaurants in the area? Okay. What are some of the favorite restaurants in the area? And he rattles off like kind of low end restaurants that aren't like my vibe. That's going to tell me we're not going to be aligned in our tastes. You know what I'm saying? So just ask things that are important to you that you're not 100% sure from just the chatting in the app.
What kinds of messages would you say are like a run from the hills, red flag, and do you just unmatch? Or, I mean, in my case, like if you've already gone maybe a little bit further and had a conversation with someone, how do you let that situation go?
Are we talking about that weird guy that with the foot fetish thing?
Yes, although I would say I tend to get other messages too. So I don't, and I, with other ladies, I'm sure they've experienced things that are not necessarily exactly that spot on, but just anything that you would say would be considered like a red flag or just, yeah, just stop the communication.
I mean, I think anything when they seem like, remember what I told you last night? You saw it, right? I circled it and I said you ignored it. Since I've been doing this and been a matchmaker, women do say like, gosh, men post sexual things to me that are not, and I've always wondered to myself because I haven't personally been in that situation where that's ever happened. But I think last night was an epiphany for me because I think where it starts is they are going to, and there's no pun intended here, they're going to put a toe in the water to like feel you out in terms of to see how much they can get away with to kind of, so when he just literally, and to some women it could sound innocent, to me I was like, oh hell no. But because it came out of the blue, he was like, I like, what did he say?
Something like I
Michelle?
like really well manicured hands and feet.
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, I immediately was like, why is this guy bringing this weird thing up out of the blue? I think that they're trying to float it out there and see how you respond. And for me, it was an immediate red flag. So if that were happening to me, I would just immediately unmatch with the guy. But see, you didn't, and you kept chatting with him. So
Yeah.
that kind of told him, oh, she might be okay with what I'm into, you see, and then they're going to gradually escalate as he did, right? He was like gradually trying, and it's almost, I don't want to use the word grooming because it's like, that's like kind of not fully relevant, but in a way, they're certainly trying to like pre-qualify you and get you accustomed to their predilections. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Yeah.
and they're trying to test the boundaries of how much further can I push this. So I think in this case, if I were you, we know he's low level. We know he's not at your level. I would unmatch with him and I would block him and just send him away.
It's more of the fact that it was said so early, right? Because it's
And
not,
and randomly, completely
yeah.
out of context. You're literally having a regular conversation with him and he just inserts it in. And it was just like, because he's sitting there in his mind going, okay, how can I play along and be normal? And at what point can I insert my weirdness in? You see what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
and that's what he did, and you kind of flirted back. It didn't disturb you. And he saw that as like a green light to kind of escalate.
What about guys that are just like, oh, you're really hot or you're really beautiful or something like that? That always is a turn off to me, but I don't know if that's something that is a red flag or if other women
I think
find
I think
that.
again, are if they insert it in where there's no context and it's just out of the blue, it does tell me that they're kind of a guy that's more superficial and perhaps gonna be looking more for a hookup.
Okay.
Let me say this because I have to say it while it's on my brain, because I always think in terms of my clients, and my clients wouldn't insert something's random like you're hot into the middle of a conversation if they see a woman for long term and they're hoping for a long term substantial relationship, right? That doesn't quite match. Like you would never, if you flip it for yourself, even if you're talking to a guy and you've read his profile and you're excited about like his mind and what he does and his hobbies, you're not going to randomly insert like, oh, I'm into feet, or oh, dude, I noticed you're so hot. No, because you're way more elevated than that. You know what I mean?
No,
So
absolutely.
just flip the script. Would you say something like that? No. All right, it's a red flag. This is a question about boundaries. When should you legitimately be upset about something, and when should you be a little more open-minded? My answer might surprise you. Gina, I just want to confirm, when we forward the action to a phone call and they'll say, I'll call you on Monday around 3ish, and they don't call, I close or unmatch with them and move on. I think, I think, I think that's not accurate. I think you guys tend to unmatch people too soon, and you don't know what has happened in somebody's life. I mean, it certainly doesn't look positive, but I think to unmatch, I just leave them there. I just let them hang out there. And then, I mean, if he came out back and said, oh my God, I was in a car accident Friday, or oh my God, something happened, blah, 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 then that would be different. But I wouldn't unmatch. I wouldn't be so quick to unmatch. I would just let them stay there for a bit, because it doesn't cost you anything to just leave them there. You know what I mean? I think sometimes we unmatch because we want them to know they were bad. I don't think we should even care that much about it either way. You know what I mean? Thoughts on men that say they're separated. For all intents and purposes, I'm divorced, is what he wrote. Okay. The problem I have with this, and again, this just comes from a matchmaking perspective, is that if you're a woman that wants to get married, um, then he can't get married, right? He can't get married while he's still legally married to somebody else. Also, if it's about money, okay, if it's about money, those things can drag on for a very, very long time. And I've seen it go either way. I had a client years ago. He was never going to get back. But the divorce started dragging out for so long, and it was about money. And he dated some pretty phenomenal women, but he was still not able to legally be free to be untangled from the situation. So he still had kind of one foot in, one foot out. And then you know what happened? He ended up getting back with this woman. They are now back together. And he didn't get back with her while we were working together. But I was like, hey, whatever happened to so and so? And I looked him up, and sure enough, he ended up going backwards. And it might have been, do you know the saying, it's cheaper to keep her? So sometimes that ends up happening as well. But I think ultimately it has to be a judgment call, because I can also give you the other side of the coin. I knew this woman, and this wasn't through matchmaking, it was through friends. And she had gotten divorced, and she met this guy on an app. I think they met on Tinder. And he was still legally married. In fact, I think he hadn't even moved out yet. Okay. But she was fine with it. Again, she wasn't working with me. I had no say over what she did. I just knew her through social circles. And she was fine with it, because she had been in a sexless marriage. And I think he gave her a lot of what she needed and wanted, positive attention. And he actually turned out to be a really cool guy. She was a little overweight, and he was short, very short, but he was really cute. He had kids, and they were sort of okay with what each other had going on. Um, and he was like, I think, a film exec. He was in the film business. And so she was okay with his situation, and he was okay with whatever she had going on. And do you know, he ended up, bottom line is, let me just cut to the chase here. I hadn't, sometimes I'm like, she pops in on my Facebook, and I'll see like her stuff. You know how that happens. And I think this was like pre-COVID when they met. So it might have been 2018 or 19. Okay. And I just saw, so they've been together all this time, and they just got married. And they just got married. But I mean, but I'm not saying the relationship didn't progress in all that time. I think it did. I think he moved out, he got his own place. She, their relationship progressed, and she just hung in there until he got divorced, and now they're married to each other. So it just depends on where you're at, if you're willing to roll the dice with it and hang with it. And I think everybody's different. I always prefer to err on the side of caution and not roll the dice. So when I give you advice, it's about taking the safer route rather than the risky route. So that's kind of how I do it. But I've seen all kinds of scenarios happen. It just depends on what you want, and whether you're willing to roll the dice. Here's our last question for this week's session. It's about how to know if he's being overly sexual too soon and maybe his intentions aren't honorable, or is he just simply paying you a compliment?
When you are in the throes of a conversation, like you'll see when I send you these, whatever, this from this guy. But like, you know, as he was in his diatribe of thoughts, one of the things he said to me, he's like, and your legs, by the way, and he wrote like a smiley face. And I was just like, what? Like, so for me, that made me take pause because I was like, I'm just trying to get to know you. But like, what do you do if the guy is just overly?
I don't think that's overly.
Okay.
I think if it's, I mean, listen, again, we are showing off your legs. Let's face it. You know what I mean? So we would have to be upset. I mean, not upset. We would have to be unreasonable to think that they're not going to acknowledge it. They will, of course. But if it's like, cause I've seen messages from guys where that's all they're talking about, like they have nothing else to say, that's not good. But
Right.
if a guy is genuinely trying to make real conversation and making effort in that way, then we give him a pass because of course, you know, they're going to compliment you.
Right. That's what I thought. I sort of
I
pivoted
wouldn't be
away
bothered.
I pivoted him away from the flirting. I was like, thank you for the compliment. And then what do you do to stay active? Like to redirect the conversation?
There you go. Yes. Redirect it. And if they don't pivot with you, then we kick them to the curb. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but you know, hey, I'm grateful when somebody shows us who they are right away. Saves us a lot of time and effort. So we kick them to the curb.
I love all of these questions. So that'll wrap it up for this session and this episode. And I think we've covered a ton of ground. Hopefully you're leaving a little more smarter, a little more wiser than when you first showed up. I'll tell you, I don't ever mean to hurt anyone's feelings, but I feel like my job is to tell you the truth because I don't think I'm doing anybody a service to tell them what they want to hear. I want to tell you what you need to hear. And I'm basing it not even on my own random opinions. I'm basing this on all the years that I have been talking to both men and women about love and dating, as well as seeing behind the curtain of matchmaking, knowing what she does right and wrong, knowing what he does right and wrong, knowing what makes relationships tick and stick and go the distance for the long term, or what sabotages the whole thing right away. And I'm here to share all of that great intel with you. So when I tell somebody, you know, and they show up and I can't tell you how many people, I cannot tell you how many people tell me, oh my God, everybody says I look young for my age. Everybody thinks they look young for their age. And I mean, everybody. I've never met anybody that says, oh, people tell me I look old for my age. No. So, you know, we want to keep it realistic. Hey, you look great, but you don't look radically young for your age. Or be open-minded if somebody's going to change their age on the dating apps. It doesn't make them a pathological liar. Give people a little bit of grace and a little bit of wiggle room. And let's have some humility and let's have a good look at ourselves and what we're doing wrong. Because here's the thing, you can never change anybody else. We always want to sit around and figure out what's wrong with them. Why did they do this? Why did they do that? But at the end of the day, we cannot control what other people do. We can only control what we do. We can only be our best selves, showing up as our best selves and hoping the other person does the same. And when they don't, and it doesn't work for us, we don't stick around and try to change them because that will never work. We realize this is my boundary. This doesn't work for me. And I've given the person a few opportunities to rise to my level of standards, and they're just not happening. And this is when it's time to cut them loose and move on, because this is your one life, and I want you to make it as good as you possibly can. And that starts with who you choose to let into your life. Okay? I hope it helps, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Don't forget to follow me on my socials. Instagram or TikTok, Matchmaker Gina Hendrix, or subscribe here so that you never miss an episode. And please share with your friends. Thanks for listening. We got another special episode for you next week.
Want to keep up with more of Gina's advice? Follow her on TikTok and Instagram at Matchmaker Gina Hendrix or visit her matchmaking website, ginahendrix.com.